Welcome to the WalterFootball.com podcast. This is episode 266. Joined once again by Jacob Camenker from NBC Sports Boston. And Jacob and I are going to be talking about the 2020 NFL Combine as well as the A.J. Bouye trade that just happened like 10 minutes ago. Jacob, how are you?
I'm doing great. Spring's in the air. It's like 60 degrees in New England. So I broke out the yellow shirt, which I usually don't wear on this podcast because I don't know. Sometimes I look weird in yellow, but yeah, we're going with it today.
Oh, it's a fine color on you. I'm wearing my traditional black or dark blue, whatever. My wife told me not to wear white on the podcast, so I'm following her instructions. All right. So the A.J. Bouye trade happened. I found out about it as I was driving home from the gym. So I just posted the grades on WalterFootball.com. But I'm curious to hear about your thoughts on the trade because I haven't yet. So what do you think?
Yeah, so I was kind of surprised that Bouye got moved just because I hadn't heard a ton about him getting moved. I mean, in terms of the Jaguars not having cap space, I guess it's not surprising that they get rid of Bouye. But now they've traded both their starting cornerbacks within the last year. So they're now down Jalen Ramsey and A.J. Bouye. So they're going to have to add some replacements in the draft and free agency, depending on how much cap space they want to spend. But I think they did a pretty good job getting a fourth-round pick from the Broncos. I had read that the Jaguars had considered cutting Bouye if they couldn't trade him. So the fact that they were able to get a fourth-round pick is pretty good overall, I would say. And that according to their depth chart, they're going to have their top three corners, Trey Herndon, DJ Hayden, and Perry Nickerson next year, which is not ideal, but you know, maybe they'll use the fourth rounder to grab one and one of their two first rounders on CJ Henderson or something like that. So I think it's a good trade for the Jaguars. I like it okay for the Broncos. I don't love the idea that they gave up a fourth rounder for someone who's going to get cut. But, you know, they might lose Chris Harris to free agency, and Bouye should be a good replacement on the outside. So I'm expecting that Bouye should do well there. So I'm not going to kill them for it, but I think the Jaguars win the trade.
Yeah, I think so too. The Bouye's owed $13 million over the next 2 years, each of the next 2 years, I should say. That's a lot for him. He's not a number one corner. He's a number two, and he's kind of a fading one at that. He didn't play well at all last year. In 2018, he was just okay. 2017, he was great. 2017, but like he's been fading recently, and he's paid a lot of money. So the Jaguars, who are, as you said, they have financial problems stemming from the Nick Foles signing and other contracts they gave out. They need to move on from him, and they could have cut him to get a fourth round pick from him. I think it's a big win for the Broncos. I think they're going to regret Bouye. He's kind of an overrated player. He always was. I know. When he was with the Texans and he was kind of considering his options as a free agent, I had someone on an NFL team tell me that there's no way teams should be paying what Bouye is going to get. And he got a lot of money. And yeah, the Jaguars got a great year out of him, but the past 2 years, he hasn't played up to how much he's been paid. So I think it's definitely a win for the Jaguars. I can understand why Denver did it because they have such cornerback problems, but I think they're going to regret this trade based on how much they have to pay Bouye. And then surrounding our fourth round pick it could hurt them in the long run.
Yeah, it really could, especially since the Broncos have some young talent. So, you know, it might be better off adding to their young core. But just looking at what they have, like, you know, Chris Harris is going to walk, and then their top corner is slot man Bryce Callahan, who is good when healthy, but he didn't play at all last year after signing in free agency. So I feel like they felt they had to do something at corner. I agree with you in that Bouye is not number one, but I think he could get back to being a really strong number two. He's still young enough. He's 28. Maybe he bounces back with a defensive guru like Vic Fangio coaching him, but there are definitely risks involved with this for the Broncos, because if Bouye doesn't pan out and is owed that $13 million, like you said, it could absolutely backfire on the Broncos.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a chance that he bounces back. He's going to be 29 in August, so he's still young enough to do so. But I think it's more likely that he either slightly underperforms and then greatly underperforms, but he could definitely bounce back. So we've had a couple questions on the Jaguars from both Andrew and TJ. So Andrew asks, will they blow it up and move Calais Campbell? TJ asks, what are your thoughts on the Jaguars wanting to trade Nick Foles? So like, where do you see the Jaguars going on like from here, considering those questions?
I mean, they have like one of the weirdest situations because just a year or 2 years ago, it was like, oh, they got to the AFC title game with Blake Bortles and they seem to be on the rise with a great defense. But, you know, they've made some bad investments, and Nick Foles did not pan out in his first year. I kind of think that even if they want to move him, it's just the cost of moving him is not going to be worth it for them. So they shouldn't. Like, they're better off just keeping him around this year, even if they want to roll with Minshew as the backup or the starter. Just like, you're not going to get good value for Foles. You might even have to give up extra value to get someone to take that contract, especially with so many good passers on the open market. Like, we never see that happen. So they should hold on to Foles, I think, because I can't really think of another team that would be able to take on Foles' contract and would want to and consider him a big enough upgrade. Because any team that has cap space could just target someone on the free agent market who's a little bit younger, maybe a little less proven, but could also come cheaper. So I think Foles is going to be, with the Jaguars next year. I think Campbell will be too. I think we might see them like blow everything up next year or even at the trade deadline. But I think that they kind of have to stick with some of what they have at least now. But it's going to be like kind of a retool year for them.
Yeah, I think they might be one of the worst teams in the NFL. I mean, they have an uncertain quarterback situation. Like, Foles could improve, and yeah, the point that TJ made about him getting hurt is definitely legitimate. But he really hasn't succeeded outside of Philadelphia. And that was even kind of like a small sample size. I mean, before he won the Super Bowl, he really struggled in some of the regular season games. There's no doubt he's overpaid. And you're right, it's going to be very difficult to move him. If they do move him, it'll be a situation where they have to give up picks like that Brock Osweiler trade from a couple years ago. So it'll be like that. And the Jaguars, they have a bad offensive line. Now they have this dreadful cornerback situation. Their linebackers are terrible. Defensive line is still very good, and they still have Leonard Fournette, DJ Chark. So they have some good players. But I think overall they're one of the worst teams in the NFL. So they might just decide that, if they start like 0-3, 0-4, they might offload Campbell or some of their other guys and try to tank for Trevor Lawrence. I think that's definitely a legitimate option they have.
Yeah, I actually like the idea of them waiting till being in season to see if they should move Campbell, because you don't want to trade like a veteran leader before a season even begins unless you're really looking to tank. And I don't think the Jaguars are going to want to purposely tank at this point because, like you said, they do have a little bit of talent and they have a lot of draft picks and a lot in the first 4 rounds. So they might be able to add some talent, at least give them an infusion of talent there and be a little bit more competitive. But I think if they start 0-3, like you said, trading Campbell is going to be probably easy if teams have cap space, because Campbell's a great veteran leader, a great pass rusher. He fits in 4-3, 3-4 scheme, whatever you want to do. So I think they'd be best served doing that and holding on to Foles for one more year, because no one's going to want him. And you don't want to do a Brock Osweiler salary dump trade unless you're in position to contend right away. When the Texans did that, they were pretty well situated to continue to be a playoff team. The Jaguars, if they get rid of Nick Foles, they're not going to magically be a playoff team again.
Right. I think it makes too much sense, like not to move Campbell. Like, if you think about it, they're not going to make the playoffs this year. Like, it'll take a miracle, and Campbell is just going to get older and older, and this might be their last chance to get something good for him. Like, what if he declines this year? Because now he's in his mid-30s. He could regress. I feel like they have to get something for him because they are rebuilding. Like, they don't really have much going on outside of the few players I mentioned. But they do have 2 first-round picks, so they can improve. So we'll see what they do with those first-round picks, and we'll talk about some of those guys they could draft, from our combine discussion. And yeah, what TJ says is true about the other 3 teams being very competitive. I think there's no doubt they're the worst team in that division. So let's get to some of the players they might draft, and maybe Jalen Hurts, as Rip Rip Lips says. I think that's definitely a possibility for them in the mid rounds if they want to go that route. So Jalen Hurts is obviously one of the quarterbacks who competed this weekend at the combine. So let's go position by position, starting with the quarterbacks because they competed on the first day. What stood out to you from the quarterback day?
Yeah, so I was pretty impressed with Jalen Hurts, actually. I thought he did pretty well. I thought he showed off pretty good arm strength. I wasn't expecting him to, look like one of the better passers there, but he showed off good arm strength. And, he proved to teams that he's not just an athlete. He can throw the ball. And anyone who watched him at Oklahoma last year will say, like, yeah, we already knew that. But it's still encouraging to see that at the combine under different coaches because, Lincoln Riley has been great with quarterbacks. So it's good to see that him finding success there. I thought he did well. I thought Jordan Love did pretty well, too. He showed off a killer arm, and we really looked to have some upside, some ability to get the ball down the field. I was pretty disappointed with Jake Fromm. I'm a big Fromm fan and supporter. And I've been kind of driving the train of he should end up on the Patriots, but he did not look good at all at the combine in terms of compared to the other quarterbacks. He didn't show off much athletic ability, and his arm was clearly weaker than most of the others that showed off their arm strength. So I think that's going to hurt him. I think Jordan Love's probably going to be on the rise, and I think Hurts in particular kind of solidified the fact that he should be a mid-round pick. If not because, he has Taysom Hill type upside is what I'll say. Like, even if he's not ready as a passer yet, needs some time to develop in that area, he could absolutely, be a top backup and work into specific packages on the offense and maybe even special teams.
Yeah, I think the combine is kind of like made for the quarterbacks, kind of like Jordan Love, as you were saying, Justin Herbert, these guys who have some, kind of mental downfalls, sort of. Jordan Love is not his pocket IQ, his pocket awareness is not very good. His football IQ is pretty low at this point. Like, that could improve for sure with very good coaching. But right now, I don't think he's ready to play in the NFL. I think he has to wait a year, maybe two. But in a combine setting where all he has to do is make throws and he doesn't have to read any defenses, he's going to shine. It's kind of like the same thing with Justin Herbert, who teams think he's going to come up small in like big moments. And, the combine, it is a big moment, but like all he has to do is throw. Like, he doesn't have to win a game or anything. So, the combine is made for them, and it's not made for someone like Jake Fromm, who's like a gritty guy. He's like a winner. He's going to win over the locker room. His arm talent was on display, and it wasn't very good. He was probably one of the least impressive quarterbacks throwing, like, outside of Shea Patterson, who was just dreadful. But yeah, Jake Fromm did not do very well. I dropped him to the third round of my mock draft. Still going to the Patriots, though. I think that is a good fit. I still like it, but I don't think the Patriots need to take him at 23 or even trade down to like the 30s and take him. I think they can get him in the third round now. So I think that makes a lot of sense for him. So all right. And anything else for the quarterbacks, or do you want to move on? We had another question, obviously another quarterback, any Tom Brady news from the combine. So did you hear anything?
Yeah. So my colleagues, Phil Perry and Tom Curran, have been all over the Tom Brady news over at NBCSportsBoston.com. Phil was at the combine. From what it sounds like, they did not meet with him. The Patriots representatives did not meet with him. Or his agent, Don Yee. There had been rumors that he was going to meet with them there, but those turned out to be false. At this point in time, we just don't, there's not much known about Brady, but the latest that I've read from Karin and is that they're not in like a Cold War situation. There is communication for both sides. Brady's probably going to let the Patriots make an offer at some point. It's just, they're waiting for the CBA to be firmly established as to what that might look like. And, the Patriots are waiting to see what other teams are offering Brady. Brady wants to know what his market outside of New England looks like. So teams like the Titans and the Raiders may be pursuing him. I think ESPN's Jeff Darlington said the Titans were maybe the favorite to land Brady. But at this point in time, there's just not much known, but he's going to meet with a bunch of teams. He's going to do the free agent process. Once the domino falls, we'll know where he ends up. I still think that he's probably going to land back in New England, but I could see him going to Tennessee. I think that's probably the most sensible fit outside of New England at this point.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I mean, I was surprised to hear Darlington say that he would be surprised if Brady didn't go back, if Brady went back to the Patriots. You know, I think that's kind of crazy. Like, yeah, they're not talking right now, but they still have a lot of time to do so. So I think Brady is kind of trying to raise his leverage and trying to get the most from the Patriots. And I think that's definitely a legitimate plan that he has. But, you know, Tennessee makes sense as well because of Mike Vrabel. I know they were FaceTiming or something. I don't know what that means, but they are in communication apparently, which might be against the rules. So hopefully the Titans don't get in trouble for that. But yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those two teams. I heard maybe Vegas. I really don't buy that. I could see the Raiders being interested, but I don't think he goes to Vegas unless Giselle is like, oh, I want to see all these Cirque du Soleil shows. So I don't know. Maybe she's the ultimate boss. We had another question about Teddy Bridgewater going to the Bucs. Before we move on to running backs, what do you think about that?
I think that would be an interesting fit. I think it could be a good one. You know, Bridgewater, I would kind of describe as the anti-Jameis Winston in the way that, you know, Winston has massive arm talent, constantly pushes the envelope, throws the ball downfield, but he also makes a ton of mistakes, so you have to live with those. Bridgewater's kind of more of a game manager, but in a good way, in that he can get the ball downfield, but mostly he chooses to make the safe throw, make the safe play. We saw him execute the Saints offense to perfection last year in place of Drew Brees and really keep the team in great playoff position. So I think I'd like Bridgewater with the Buccaneers. I still think Phillip Rivers will end up there. I know there's been buzz about Rivers to the Colts, but I still am not quite buying that at this point. But if Rivers does go to the Colts, I think Bridgewater would be a really good fit there for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I think so too. It makes a lot of sense. You know, they're taking someone from a rival, which is nice. But I agree with you. I think Phil Rivers makes the most sense. But he could go to the Colts. It'd be. I think he wanted to move to Florida and stay with his family, so it makes sense to stay in Tampa. So I don't know if Rivers really wants to go to Indianapolis, but it could be his best chance to win a Super Bowl or at least get far in the playoffs. So I think that makes sense. We had a couple other questions real quick. Trubisky, the Bears said they're going to start him next year, which is. That is horrible. I agree, but at some point you have to know what a sunk cost is, right?
Yeah, I mean, you got to just, you know, Trubisky hasn't looked like it. Don't commit to him as your starter now. Bring in competition, see if it improves him. But they're not taking that route, which sets up a pretty bad lame duck scenario for Trubisky if he struggles.
Yeah, as Alex Smith going to play next year? Hope so. I have no idea. Do you have any insight on that?
I know he was looking better and he had the leg saving device off a while back now, but I don't know if he's going to play. I think he's going to try to. It's just a matter of whether or not he gets clearance and whether or not he can actually be on the field. I hope he does too, though.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm laughing because Kenny posted this comment. Brady and Giselle have so much money, they could probably hire their own Cirque staff and build a theater wherever they go. I would love to see a Tom Brady Cirque du Soleil show, but I don't think my wife would want to see that with me. So it would be fun to see it. I don't know how enjoyable it would be, but I think it'd be interesting. All right, let's move on to running backs. So we had DeAndre Swift and Jonathan Taylor. I think they're the two club leaders to be chosen in the first round. So what's the ask you for the running backs?
I think Taylor's 40 time was one of the biggest things of the combine. The fact that he clocked in under 4.4, I think he was either 4.38 or 4.39. That's a great time for him because, you know, watching him on tape at Wisconsin, he demonstrated some speed, but, you know, it wasn't always there. And, you know, Wisconsin backs in the past have lacked some speed and, you know, have become plotters at the next level and have panned out. All you have to do is look at Monty Ball and John Clay, really productive Wisconsin guys who didn't pan out at the next level. But Taylor has a lot more speed and burst than I think people thought. And I think that's going to help him in his case to go in the first round. I think DeAndre Swift also had a really solid overall workout. So I think it's possible he could go maybe in the top 20. I know he's been mocked at 18 to the Dolphins and you and Charlie's mocks pretty consistently. depending on what happens with the Buccaneers in free agency, I could see them targeting either Smith or Taylor early in the draft too. So I think both of those guys really helped themselves out and solidified that they're going to be the top 2 backs off the board. That was already known, but they should be first round picks. And I was very impressed with A.J. Dillon, the Boston College running back. I know there had been some buzz about him a couple years ago. I'm a Boston College fan. My dad went to BC, so I watched A.J. Dillon play a fair amount, and he looks like a workhorse at the next level. I mean, he has a lot of tread on his tires, but his athletic numbers at the combine were absolutely insane. Like he put up almost an 11-foot broad jump, a 41-inch vertical, and he ran the 40-yard dash at 4.53 seconds, despite being 247 pounds, which is comparable to like Derrick Henry's weight. So I'm not saying Dillon will be Derrick Henry, but there are some similarities in how they run fast and physical and the athletic ability they have.
Yeah, he was impressive. I did not expect that sort of athleticism from him. Jonathan Taylor was great too. I moved him into the first round of my mock draft. I have him going to Baltimore. I saw that Daniel Jeremiah mocked a running back to the Ravens, and he has ties to the Ravens. He used to work for them. So I take what he says about the Ravens like pretty seriously. And if he thinks the Ravens could use a running back, even though they signed Mark Ingram last year and they have Justice Hill, I think that makes a lot of sense. There are a lot of carries to go around. And if they don't like Hill, they would definitely be interested in Taylor or Swift. I know the Dolphins like Swift. That's kind of a little outdated information. I heard that at the Super Bowl. Maybe their opinions have changed. I'll have to see. But yeah, I still have, like you said, I still have the Dolphins taking Swift. Couple other running backs who impressed me. Cam Akers. He was his feet were great in the drills, and he ran a 4.47, which is pretty good. Someone who really impressed me is Darington Evans from Appalachian State, I guess. He ran a 4.41, 37 inches in the vertical, 10.5 broad jump. Showed like great cutting ability in the drills, and he looked good as a receiver too. So he impressed me. I have to move him up in my mock draft. I didn't completely adjust my big board yet, but he will be higher in my mock drafts.
Yeah, I thought Evans looked really good in the drills too. Just the way he was able to move, and movement is so important for running backs and cutting ability. So I think he's definitely a guy that would be on the rise, especially where some of the running backs ran slower than expected, like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He clocked in slower than I thought he was going to be. And the same for LaMichael Pirine. I'm a big fan of Samaje Pirine, which my Redskins followers will know. I've liked him to a fault. So I was looking forward to see what his cousin LaMichael would do. And he ran a 4.62, I think. So that was not ideal for him. And I do like this comparison that Joshua has here. Faster Brandon Jacobs for A.J. Dillon. I think that's a good way of putting it. And I really think Dillon's going to find success wherever he gets taken. It's just a matter of how do teams view the 1,000+ touches he had in 3 years at BC.
Yeah, I think that's a problem for Taylor as well. I don't think it'll affect them in like year 1, 2, or 3, but their careers could definitely be shortened. Instead of retiring at 31, maybe they have to retire at like 28 or 29, which kind of makes you wonder like why these coaches are running them into the ground. I don't like it. I really don't. And I don't get like what Andrew said about noticing that ATN wasn't in the draft. I don't get why these college running backs go back to college football. I think that's crazy.
Yeah, ETN's decision was shocking.
Yeah, for sure. Some of the other guys too. All right, let's get to the receivers. The big news was Henry Ruggs' time. There was some talk that he could beat John Ross's record in the 40, but Ruggs didn't. But he still ran a 4.27, which is great. So, what stood out to you from the receivers?
I think one of the things that stood out about Ruggs' 40 time is, have we ever been more disappointed for a 4.27 in the 40? Like, that's ridiculously fast. And people are like, oh, he only ran a 4.27. And I was guilty of it too. I'm like, wow, he didn't clock in as fast as I thought. But it's like, that's ridiculous. So that was one big thing. One guy who I was really excited to watch, and he lived up to the hype, was Denzel Mims from Baylor. I had watched him play a bunch against Oklahoma last year and a couple other Big 12 games. And he looked really good making contested catches. He has like a big, lanky frame. And I thought like, hey, this guy has like the potential to be a good starter on the outside, depending on what his athletic testing numbers are. And they were incredible. He cracked a 4.4 in the 40-yard dash, which was surprising because I had him pegged as a 4.5 guy. And then he ran, I think, the 3-cone drill, which is really important for receivers because it demonstrates cutting and route running ability. I think he logged like a 6.66 in that, which is absurdly fast. And then, through all that, he looked really good on the field and in drills, and he showed off his contested catch ability. So I thought that he was one of the biggest standouts at receiver, and I could see him moving up draft boards. I think one mock I read today had him in the first round. I don't think he'll get there, but I think he's going to be a day 2 pick. I can't remember if it was Todd McShay's mock that had Mims in the late first or if it was Daniel Jeremiah, but he was one of the biggest winners at the combine.
That is a first round for Denzel Mims would be shocking to say the least. I don't think he's a first round prospect. Day 2, I could definitely see. 6.66 is right. Impressive, but very ominous as well. We have the top guys, outside of Ruggs, and that was a little disappointing, but 4.27 is still amazing. The Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb, like they didn't blow you away, from workout perspective, but from what Charlie heard, and he reported this, they were both the most impressive receiving prospects in the interviews. Like they interviewed extremely well. Teams were very impressed with Judy's football IQ. They say like very smart guy, is going to be a hard worker. And you can tell that by the routes he runs. He's the best route runner, I think, in this draft class. So I still would say he's the number 1 receiver who will be taken. I think he goes, I'd be shocked if he falls past the Raiders at 12. And then I think CeeDee Lamb, then Ruggs in some order. So what order do you see these guys going in?
I've had it as Jeudy, Lamb, Ruggs for a while, but I think I might be shifting a little more towards Jeudy, Ruggs, Lamb, just because I think Judy's going to get pushed down boards a little bit, which might push Lamb down more, but Ruggs is a little bit of a different receiver because he has the speed element. I think like a team like the Broncos might really like that. So I think it's going to be those 3, and then Justin Jefferson might be the 4th off the board.
Yeah, I think Jefferson might be 4th. Before the combine, I would have definitely set. Well, maybe not definitely, but I think my favorite for number 4 would have been Jalen Rhaegar from TCU. He was a little disappointing, like not like terrible. Like, I mean, he ran a 4.47. His 3-cone was 7.31, which is horrible. I think that could hurt him a lot, but still, I mean, he was very impressive on tape. I mean, he falls to round 2, but I still think he goes in the first round. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I was pretty disappointed by him because I thought he was going to rival Ruggs, in a classic 40-yard dash duel, but in the end, he didn't have a great outing. I think Rhaegar put on a little bit of a weight before the combine to bulk up a bit and show off that he can play at a higher weight, but that might have impacted his speed. I think he might fall in the second round because of the combine performance. We saw it with DK Metcalf last year, where granted Rhaegar's tape and Metcalf's tape are completely different, and Metcalf had injury issues, but Metcalf did a lot of things great at the combine, but had a bad 3-cone. So I think if teams are focused on the 3-cone, which they often are at receiver, that could really hurt Rhaegar. But I still think he's going to go in the first 2 rounds without a doubt. And he could easily go in the first round if teams are willing to forgive his combine performance, or if he performs better at a lighter weight at the TCU Pro Day.
Yeah, I think teams are willing to forgive it. Remember last year when Metcalf had those impressive numbers, and I saw people say, "Oh, he's going in the top 10, top 15." He fell to the end of the second round, so teams weren't as impressed by his numbers. I mean, they look good on paper, but in college, he was not a first round pick. Like he had issues running routes and stuff. But he deserves a lot of credit. I mean, he made a lot of adjustments to his game. He improved his route running, and he was excellent for the Seahawks last year. So he proved a lot of people wrong. A lot of teams pass on him, and they regret it. Some other receivers who impressed me, Chase Claypool ran a great time. Charlie Campbell in his receiver rankings said Claypool might be a first round pick. This is before the combine. He said he might be a first round pick if it weren't for his speed concerns. But then he ran a 4.42. So I think that teams might be warming up to him. I'm hesitant to put him in the first round, but I think I would put him in the second round. John Hightower from Boise State, I thought he made some amazing catches, and he ran a 4.43, which is pretty good. Let's see here. Denzel Mims, you mentioned, I thought he was very good. And on the flip side, Laviska Shenault, he ran a 4.58, and there are health concerns with him. So he might be someone who drops into the second round. Like usually when prospects drop, it's not because they ran a slow 40 time. It's because teams have a concern with their health issues. We saw that with Jawan Taylor last year, the tackle from Florida. Everyone had him in the top 10. He fell to the second round because teams were concerned about his injuries. And now we're hearing that Shenault has these injury concerns. So I fear that he could fall to round 2.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. And I had Shenault as a top 20 pick, I think, in my first mock draft, but I may remove him from the first round entirely. And just because this is, one, a deep receiver class, and two, a lot of guys impressed at the combine and are on the way up. And Shenault, if there's injury concerns, will move down. I agree with your take on Claypool, too. He was another one that really impressed me because a lot of people joked before the combine, like, oh, he's going to have to move to tight end. And then he goes out there with that speed, and it's like he could probably play anywhere on offense. So we'll see where he ends up. I'm interested to see how much he rises.
Yeah, me too. I think it ultimately really depends on what these personnel decision makers, like what they think. Like if they think that this 40 translates to like actual gameplay, he could just be a track guy and he knows how to run the 40. So teams tend to be good at like defining that, although they did whiff with DK Metcalf. So we'll see. All right. We have tight ends, a very lackluster group. Anyone stand out to you in particular?
If I had to pick one, probably Cole Kmet stood out, the Notre Dame guy. He ran fairly fast. And then Albert Okuwebunam. I had to look up how to pronounce that a few different times. But I'm going to call him A-OK because that's much easier. But he had a great 40 time. People did not think he was going to run fast, and yet he clocked a little bit less than a 4.5, which is unbelievable. So for a tight end, I think it was the fourth fastest time, or tied for the fourth fastest time by a tight end since 2003. So he showed that off, and he was a guy who used to be thought of as a potential first round pick. I know he had been in the first round of some of your mocks back in the day before he slid due to some injury concerns and other problems. But I thought those guys stood out. A-OK didn't do anything outside of the 40, really, I don't think. But the rest of this class it's just not a very good tight end class. Like if I was looking to build a team and I need a tight end, so like the Patriots or the Redskins, both teams I cover, I would not recommend trusting this class for anything more than a potential backup.
Yeah, I think you take a shot on someone in day 3 and just hope they pan out. A-OK, yeah, he ran that 4.49, which is great, but then he didn't look very good in the drills. And then on the flip side, Adam Troutman from Dayton, he didn't run a good 40. He ran a 4.80, but I thought he was the best in the drills. He also had a 6.78 3-cone time, which is very impressive. So I think he might end up being the first tight end taken. Cole Kmet could be as well. We didn't see Thaddeus Moss work out because he had some sort of injury. Maybe he would have been the best. It is a lackluster group. I would be shocked if any tight end goes in the first round. I don't even think it's out of the question that we could see the first tight end go in the third round, just based on how disappointing these guys are. I think someone goes in the second round just because of the needs. Some teams need tight ends, like you said. Patriots, Redskins, are some others. But I think ultimately, this is just a bad group. Yeah,
I agree with your point. It would be kind of cool to see one not go to the third. Well, not for them, but it would be interesting to see how it would shake out if we got to the third round. Then would there be a run on tight ends, or how long can we go without having one taken?
It would be like real life fantasy football where there's just a run on tight ends. Like someone takes the first tight end and then people will take tight ends like randomly. And you're like, I'm always sitting there. I'm like, what are you guys doing? Just wait till the 12th round to take a tight end. So I feel like the smart teams will be thinking that as well. All right, let's go to the offensive linemen. We had it was some impressive times to say the least. We had Mekhi Becton run a ridiculous time of 5.10 at his size. He was listed at I think 364, but then the recheck had him at 357. Still ridiculous, like for a 357-pound guy to run a 5.10. And then the other impressive time was Tristan Wirfs ran a 4.85. Not I don't know what was more impressive, but like from the top 4 tackles, what stood out to you?
I think Wirfs just all around had such a good combine, and Becton did too. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that guy is going to be great at the next level. He's so big and so athletic, but I think Wirfs showing off just like elite athletic potential, and looking so good and so fluid and so, able to move in the drills. I think it established that those two guys should probably be the top 2 tackles taken, in my opinion, at least. I like Andrew Thomas and Jedrick Wills too. And I think all of them realistically should be top 15 picks. But one might slide out of circumstance or, just someone else going before them. But Wirfs' workout stood out to me the most. And I'm probably going to move him. I had Becton at number 4 to the Giants in my pre-combine mock draft. Post-combine, I'm thinking of putting Wirfs there, and Becton will not last long on the board after, but those two guys did so much to help themselves. And, Jedrick Wills and Andrew Thomas also did well in the drills and everything, but just where those two guys tested so athletically insane, I almost feel bad for the other two because those two guys are getting so much attention.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Wirfs was the best one. I mean, it's hard to say whose 40 was more impressive, but like ultimately the offensive line 40s don't really matter all that much. It's I think the drill work is way more important. And I guess to an extent, the 10-yard split is more important than the 40 as well. Wirfs had a 1.69 10-yard split, which is very good, but he was the best in the drills. I thought like he looked so great. Charlie Campbell wrote a scouting report today. He compared him to Lane Johnson. I think that's very good. It's a good comparison. So I actually moved Wirfs to number 4 to the Giants today in my mock draft. I think he's the sort of guy Dave Gettleman would love. Iowa tackle, like Gettleman's like an old school guy. These Iowa tackles have panned out so many times. There have been a few with like Robert Gallery, but like ultimately like the Iowa tackles usually do pretty well. And I think that makes the most sense. Becton, he's such a great athlete. I think he's a little raw though. So I know some people are concerned about that he may not be able to play very well right away. So I think a team like the Browns would like Becton because, they're going the more analytic route. And so, the numbers are there. Like he's just a great spark performer. So I think he makes sense for the Browns. And then you have Wills. I thought Wills was better than Andrew Thomas in the drills. I thought Andrew Thomas was probably the least impressive out of the 4 at the combine. But he still did well though. Like I don't want to like say that he had a bad afternoon or I guess bad evening at that point. So what do you think the order is that these guys go?
It's tough to like say exactly because I feel like one of the big things is like teams that are picking in the top 10. Some of them don't have needs at left tackle. Not that really matters. You can play guys on either side, but I feel like the Giants, Wirfs would be a great fit at right tackle because he played there at Iowa, whereas Becton was at left tackle in college. So, that comes into it a little bit. But if I had to guess, I would probably go Wirfs, Becton, Wills, and Thomas. It's very close for me with the 2 at the end because I think Thomas is better game tape wise. Not that Wills is bad by any means, but I just think those two could swap because some teams might view Wills as more of a guard, but I think that he could be fine at tackle.
Yeah, I have the same order, except I have Wills going before Becton, just because of how the teams are going. Like I feel like the Cardinals would like Wills better. That's not really based on anything, but I think the Browns, Becton to the Browns makes a lot of sense. And so you hear your dad saying, the only way you could do a 5-1 is if cheeseburgers are ready on the barbecue. Cheeseburgers are ready on the barbecue. I think I could break John Ross's record. So, all right. Any other? Let's just go with the tackles. Any other tackles stand out?
I'm trying to think through my head because I got all screwed up because the combine's at night. Usually it's during the day, and I would skip class and watch it. But I work at night, so it like inversed how it should have worked out. But the guy from Kansas, I think his name's Hakima Dennis, I believe.
Yeah.
I thought he was solid during the combine. I mean, you can kind of take your pick. It's another deep tackle class, but I thought he looked good in the 40s and did well enough during the drills. One guy I felt bad for was Trey Adams. He's like, he had so many injuries in college, was once a top 10 pick, and he couldn't move out there. I hope he can get somewhere and get healthier and regain some of his, athletic ability. But I feel bad because he's gone from probably being a top 10 pick to, probably being taken on day 3.
It is a shame. Once upon a time, Charlie heard the teams having Trey Adams as a top 10 prospect, and then he just injury after injury after injuries. It's just been a cascade. It's just horrible for him. I hope, like you said, I hope he recovers. It might take some time, but hopefully he becomes a solid starter in the NFL. Like he's a good technician, but his athleticism just seems to be sapped from all the injuries. So I hope he does recover. I thought Ezra Cleveland from Boise State looked very good. He moved around very well in the drills. He had the best 3-cone time of all the offensive linemen. He had a 7.26, 1.73 10-yard split. It's pretty solid. 4.93 40. If you care about 40s for linemen, I thought that he looked very good. Jack Driscoll from Auburn, I thought did well also. Prince Tega from Auburn, he has an injury, so I gave him a stock down. And then one other tackle I like was John Runyan from Michigan. I was pretty surprised by his athleticism, and he looked good in the drills, so I thought that was pretty good. Any thoughts on guards? And we had one guard related question. Do the Jaguars pick a guard at 20? I personally don't I don't really see a guard worth taking at 20. So what do you think about that? And any thoughts on the interior linemen in the combine?
Yeah, I don't think it's a very good class for guards. So I wouldn't take one at 20. I could see one sneaking into the end of the first round. But other than that, I wouldn't probably take one at that point if I'm the Jaguars. I thought Shane Lemieux looked pretty good. I think he's kind of the consensus top guard at this point. Aside from him, there weren't a ton of guards that I thought stood out. So I kind of think it's going to be Lemieux who's going to be the top guy off the board there. And he showed why at the combine. He was pretty athletic and moved pretty well. He has a ton of starting experience too. So if the Jaguars were to trade down, maybe they could target Lemieux to help at that position.
Yeah, for sure. They could probably get him in the second round, or maybe another comparable guard. I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I don't see them taking a guard at 20. I thought the best interior lineman was it may have been Nick Harris from Washington, the center. He 1.76 10-yard split. He looked like good change of direction skills in the workouts. He was pretty fluid. So I thought he looked pretty good. Matt Hennessy, also from Temple, another center. On the other side, on the flip side, Calvin Throckmorton from Oregon. There's some people think he could play tackle, but I think he has to move inside. He didn't look very good in the drills. Pretty poor athleticism, and he ran an 8.073 cone, which is just pretty bad too. We had a question from Andrew pertaining to linemen. The Bengals are trying to trade / release Cordy Glenn. Were they impressed by the linemen in the combine? Maybe so, but Cordy Glenn just barely played for them last year. He has an extensive injury history. He's getting older, as if anyone's not getting older. So what are your thoughts on this? Because I don't. First of all, I don't see them trading Glenn, but second, I think they just need new linemen, period.
I think they need new linemen too. And this is also I think probably the record for us hitting Cordy Glenn mentions, because we mentioned him every game last season for the Bengals, which was remarkable on our picks pod when we do our picks. But I do think that they need to retool that offensive line. I could easily see them with the first pick in the second round taking a tackle, whoever's on the board, whether it's we also forget, or I forget all the time, that they have Jonah Williams, and he's going to come back and probably play left tackle for them. So they could go for a guy like Ezra Cleveland, like you mentioned, or if Austin Jackson's still on the board at that point, they could add either of those guys to play the right side, or they could add Shane Lemieux if he's on the board to play guard or a comparable player. But I think at this point, Cordy Glenn is getting older, like you said. He's in his 30s. He's dealt with injuries, and the Bengals probably don't want to pay him anymore. And, if they're going to get someone else to play left tackle like Jonah Williams coming back is supposed to do, they don't really need Glenn.
Yeah, that is true. And yeah, I mean, when Glenn came back, Joe Mixon was just so much better. So yeah, they definitely need offensive linemen, like you said. All right, let's go to defensive linemen. Chase Young did not work out. Javon Kinlaw did not work out. But we had Derek Brown and some other guys. So what are your thoughts on the defensive linemen?
I'll be honest, this was the part of the combine that I was able to watch the least because I was working during this big time shift. But I was pretty impressed with James Lynch from Baylor. Another Baylor guy that I happen to like. All the Baylor and Notre Dame guys seem to impress me this year. I can't explain why, but they do. But Lynch, kind of came in off a really productive season at Baylor. He's got positional versatility, and he tested well athletically and moved really well on the field. I think that he's going to find a home somewhere in the NFL. He's going to be scheme versatile. A good team's going to find a way to use him. I think it was Lance Zierlein of NFL.com compared him to Matt Ioannidis, the Redskins pass rushing defensive tackle, who's like a really good all-around player, who was a 5th-round pick out of Temple when he came out. And I kind of see some similarities from that. If you use Lynch as an interior rusher, he's going to be able to wreak havoc on weaker guards and centers. And if you use him outside, he has enough athletic ability to make plays there too. So I was pretty impressed with what I saw of him. I thought A.J. Epinesa had one of the worst combines in terms of how it's going to impact his stock, because this is a weak edge class, or weak on at least weak from a pass rushing standpoint. And, he kind of had a chance to prove like I deserve to be the second guy off the board after Chase Young among pass rushers. And he did not test well athletically at all. So I don't think that he's going to he may not go first round now. I mean, he probably will just because it's a weak edge class, but I thought that he did a lot to hurt his stock because he's gone from now like probable top 20 pick to fringe first rounder.
Yeah, you're definitely right about that. I have him 32 to the Chiefs, so it was right on the cusp of the first round. So yeah, I think he definitely hurt himself. Derek Brown, I thought I gave him a stock up. I thought he looked pretty good, but not as amazing as I thought he would. So just slightly disappointed by him. I agree with your take on James Lynch, and the Ioannidis comparison I think is right on point. Justin Matabuk is another one who looked pretty good. He looked good. He looked very good in the drills, I thought. 7.37 cones, pretty solid time. 1.73 10-yard split, and his 4.83 40. I thought he was one of the better defensive tackles. Malcolm Roach was another good one. Around a 4.84 with a 1.68 10-yard split, which is just amazing for a guy his size. Jabari Zuniga from Florida, I thought tested very well athletically, but it kind of like expected that, so it wasn't like a huge surprise. Derek Tuska from North Dakota State, pronunciation I think was right on point with that. He was I thought he competed athletically with some of these other guys. I think he improved his stock, but outside of that, like no one really like stood out. The defensive linemen, I thought, kind of were probably the least impressive group except for tight ends. But that's because Chase Young and Javon Kinlaw didn't work out. So I think that kind of affected that.
Yeah, that definitely had a negative impact on the group as a whole. Had Young worked out, I'm sure he would have posted insane numbers. I think at this point, we've talked about this before, but I think he's probably going to the Redskins, barring some sort of trade down. I know it doesn't necessarily fill a need, but Ron Rivera is just looking to add talent to that team and sort of figure things out later. And they're setting out all sorts of smoke screens about quarterbacks. Like they're going to be interested in Tua. Like I could see that, but probably not. They're probably trying to get the Dolphins to trade up. But then there were rumors that they want Phillip Rivers, which made no sense to me. So I don't know who's feeding that rumor out there. I know Tony Pauline reported it, and Tony's a very trusted reporter. But whoever is trying to make that rumor catch on, I have my doubts about that one.
Yeah, Tony's a great reporter. But yeah, I don't understand that at all. Like Did they forget that they drafted quarterback in the first round last year? I just don't get it. I forgot to mention Ross Blacklock from TCU. I thought he looked great in the drills. I thought he was one of the better drill performers. And a 1.70 10-yard split is pretty good too. All right, let's get to the linebackers who worked right after the defensive linemen. So I assume based on what you said, you had this work shift, so you didn't really get to check out the linebackers too much either. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I missed the linebackers for the most part, but I caught some of the highlights. Like, I know that Isaiah Simmons was insane at the combine. I watched his performance afterwards. That dude, he could play anywhere. I think he's like a top 7 lock for me at this point. I just have trouble imagining that he'd get past the Panthers just because they'll look at him and say, like, what can this guy do for our defense? Matt Rule wants the defense to be fast and athletic. So Simmons fits the bill there. I mean, he can literally do anything you ask him on defense. So that was my big takeaway from watching the highlights of this. But yeah, it just reestablished what I already knew about Simmons, is that he's like one of the better defensive prospects in this class.
Yeah, you missed everyone getting hurt in their second 40 runs. So Isaiah Simmons didn't even run a second 40, which ended up being a smart move because Patrick Queen got hurt, and he was not the only one. I believe Kenneth Murray as well. Maybe not Kenneth Murray. There was another linebacker who got hurt on his second 40 run.
It was Murray. I got a notification about that during my shift. I forget if he was okay or not, but both of them got hurt.
Yeah, so you have to wonder, some of these like first round guys, maybe they shouldn't be running their 40s there. But yeah, I mean, I thought the linebackers were very good. They ran impressive times. They looked good in the drills. There were so many guys who did very well. Simmons, Simmons to the Panthers makes a lot of sense. I wonder if he's even going to be there, because maybe the Lions even take him at number 3. They have a huge issue linebacker. They've had issues. They've had problems covering in space for a long time. Simmons would be a huge upgrade there. And we'll get to Jeff Okudah in a little bit, but Simmons certainly had a better combine than Okudah or Derek Brown for that matter. So I could see him going 3. 7 makes sense. And like Joshua G says here, a perfect replacement for Telvin Smith for the Jaguars. Problem is that he may not be there. So, other linebackers who did very good. I thought Sean Bradley from Temple, he looked good in the drills, and he was way more athletic than I thought he would be. Willie Gay from Mississippi State, he had a tremendous workout. He 11.4 broad jump, 39.5-inch vertical, just insane for a linebacker, and also 4.46 in the 40. You have Malik Harrison from Ohio State. I thought he did very well. Logan Wilson from Wyoming, and Davion Taylor from Colorado. Like, all these guys did very well athletically. So anything else stand out to you from the linebackers? I know you didn't really get to watch it, but any other thoughts?
Yeah, no, I just realized who Willie Gay Jr. is. He's probably William Gay's son, and it just occurred to me. So, realizations that should have taken place a few days ago right here. But I was impressed with his time, definitely. I always like SEC linebackers. I'm biased towards them. So seeing Patrick Queen run fast, even before he got hurt, was definitely good news for him. And I think he's going to be a guy who could go in the first round, maybe on the rise. It'll be interesting to see how the linebackers shake out after Simmons in that first round, because I think both Murray and Queen should go in the first round. But I'll be interested to see who goes first after this.
Well, let me ask you that. So, which teams do you think will take Murray and Queen?
I think Murray and Queen would both be fits with the Raiders' second first-round pick, which I think is at 19, I think. Yeah. So I could see either of them going there. I could see the Patriots adding linebacker help because they have a million free agents at linebacker. The Dolphins have needs everywhere and 3 first-round picks. So if they get to their third first-round pick, and one of them is the best player on the board, they may as well go for it. I think just a lot of the playoff teams could use linebackers. Like the Saints could use one to replace Kiko Alonso. Just any team that you can never have too many linebackers in the NFL, especially ones that have speed and can cover. So I think they're going to both go somewhere in there.
I think Murray to the Raiders makes so much sense. I mean, the Raiders love these high caliber program guys who are very productive in college. Like we've seen it all the time, and they love high IQ, high character guys. Like they took Farrell last year, like way earlier than people thought they would, just because they love this character and football IQ and production. And that's Kenneth Murray to a T. Like he checks all those boxes. Whereas like Patrick Queen to the Raiders makes a little bit less sense to me because he doesn't have that like history of production. Like he wasn't even a starter at the beginning of last year. Like he took over because of injuries, and he did extremely well. But I think the profile of Murray fits more for the Raiders. Queen to you mentioned the Patriots. I think Queen would make a lot of sense to them. What about the Jaguars at 20? Like if they don't get Isaiah Simmons, they really need a linebacker. I think Patrick Queen at 20 to the Jaguars makes a lot of sense as well.
Yeah, that would make a ton of sense to me. I mean, he would fill a massive need for them. And I think Murray to the Raiders. I almost had that in my first mock, but I had the Redskins trading down, and they took him one pick ahead at 18 in the trade with the Dolphins. So I could see like both of those guys just going back to back, and the Raiders being like, we like Murray's production enough here to take him and really fix one of our biggest positions of need. And then the Jaguars might look at Patrick Queen and say like, hey, this guy's athletic. He can kind of jumpstart us at linebacker, one of our bigger needs, especially if CJ Henderson's off the board at that point. I can see the Jaguars going that route.
Luke G's Field Review. That's a channel you guys should check out for sure. If you like the Lions, definitely check that channel out. He says Simmons going to the Lions. I think I could definitely see that. I'm kind of warming up to it. I mocked Okudah to them today. It'd be a trade down, like 3 to 5. But yeah, I think I might mock Simmons to them in my next update. Well, I'll see. I try to ask around and see what other people think about that, or if I can get any other information. And before we move on to defensive backs, I should say subscribe if you're listening on YouTube. And either way, if you are or aren't, spread the word about our show. That's the best way you can help. I always get asked like. People say like, what can I do to help support the show or the website? And I just say like, just spread it out to someone who likes football. Word of mouth is the best way to support it. All right, let's get to the defensive backs, the last group. So I talked briefly about Okudah. Thoughts on him?
I was not too impressed by him at the combine. I thought that he had some good moments, but overall, I was kind of disappointed. I was expecting him to look a lot better. I know he got hurt too. He fell on his head and held out after that point. But up till that point, he had a solid 40 time. But in the on-field drills, he didn't look his best. I thought he was a little bit stiff. He didn't show natural movement. Thought his footwork was good, but he just didn't look ready for it, which is a little bit of a concern. And who knows, maybe he was just having an off day or something was bugging him, or he had another injury and then he compounded it by hitting his head. But I didn't think he was that great. I thought that the better corner at the combine was Henderson. What do you think?
I agree. Well, Henderson definitely was better at the combine. Okudah looked a little stiff in the drills. And that's something that I talked to a scout, during the Super Bowl, and like he was talking about how he thought Okudah was a little stiff, and even despite saying that, he's like, "I love Okudah. Like the plays he made at Ohio State were like just ridiculous, and like you don't see guys doing that normally. Like he's just superhuman." So yeah, I mean, like taller cornerbacks tend to be stiff. Like it doesn't matter how good they are. Like that just comes with the territory. And I don't think Okudah is just kind of like built to perform well at the combine. He's just a great player on tape. So I don't think he falls very far. Like maybe he doesn't go 3 anymore. Maybe he drops a couple of spots. Like I don't see him getting past the Jaguars at 9. Like I still think he's going to be a top 10 prospect. I'd be pretty shocked, barring injury. I'd be pretty shocked if he falls. All right. Any other cornerbacks stand out?
Yeah, obviously Henderson was pretty good. I also liked the guy from Auburn whose name I can never say, Noah Igbonahene. I thought he moved pretty well on the field. He showed off good speed, and he's super raw, but he has a lot of upside. He's only been playing defensive back, I think, for 2 or 3 years now at Auburn. So, if he lands with the right team and can get coached up, that'll definitely improve him. I also thought Darnay Holmes from UCLA. He had a nice showing. He's a little on the smaller side at 5'10", but I think that he could be a really good nickelback in the NFL. And he might be able to play outside too, but he could go to a team that really wants to add a slot man that can cover and has good athletic ability, because he showed off a lot of that stuff at the combine, and I was pretty impressed with him.
Yeah, I like them as well. A.J. Terrell from Clemson, I thought was one of the better corners in the drills. And he also ran a 4.42 40 with a 10.9 broad jump. So the great day all around for him. John Reed from Penn State, he was very athletic, very fluid in the drills too. Reggie Robinson from Tulsa, he worked out very well. Where he ran like his testing numbers are very good. A little stiff in the drills though, so that was a bit of concern. But I still think he helped himself with some of the workout numbers. Javelin Guidry ran a 4.29, so it's worth noting about him, but he didn't participate in the drills, so tough to say if he improved his stock very much. But like the numbers can't hurt. I thought Isang Bassi from Wake Forest, he was one of the best corners in the drills for sure. I actually moved them up in my mock draft. I think in the third round, maybe the fourth, but around there. So he definitely helped the stock. All right. Any safety? Any thoughts on the safeties?
Yeah, I thought there were some solid performances from the safeties. I liked Antoine Winfield Jr.'s performance probably the best. I thought Kyle Duggar, the Division 2 or 3 prospect from Lenoir Rhine, both showed well in the on-field drills. I think Winfield especially, though, he showed off like he's just a football player, and he may have upped his stock enough that he could be a day 2 pick. I know he's a little bit smaller at that 5'9" size that he measured in at, but he has enough speed and just he makes plays. Like you said with Okudah, like Okudah's not a great athlete, but he knows how to make plays. Winfield is a good athlete, and he does know how to make plays even despite his size. So I think he might be one of the first safeties off the board on Friday night.
Yeah, I agree. There was some other safeties who stood out. I thought Jeremy Chin from Southern Illinois, he worked out extremely well. 4.45 40 at 6'3", 221, just really ridiculous. Also 41-inch vertical. I thought he was pretty great. Josh Metellus and Tanner Muse from Michigan and Clemson, respectively. They worked out a lot better than I thought they would, especially Muse. Like he ran a 4.41 40, which is kind of ridiculous. And L'Jarius Sneed, I thought won as well. Antoine Winfield, but you were talking about him earlier. I think I agree with you that he was the best one there. Someone asked earlier where we think he's going to go. I would say definitely second round at the latest. I could even see him sneaking into the first round. What do you think?
Yeah, I could definitely see him sneaking into the first round. I don't know if he'll quite make it just because, again, he's a little bit on the smaller side for a safety. But, I would be surprised if he doesn't go in the top 50 picks. I think he'll go pretty early on day 2. He just is. He has natural talent. He's got football bloodlines. He's kind of got all the things that teams look for when they are trying to find a guy who is going to find success at the NFL level.
Yeah. All right. So Joshua says how CJ Henderson's ranked the 4th. I agree. I think he's what do you think about him? I think he goes in the top 20, right?
Yeah, I think it's trending that way. I think he's at least top 25 at this point. I'd be shocked if he got past 20, the Jaguars, unless the Jaguars somehow end up with Okudah. And even then they could take 2 corners because their corners are terrible, as we talked about earlier. But Henderson's definitely the second best cornerback in this class. I think that it's Okudah, him, and then, take your pick type thing. I think Trayvon Diggs, he was another guy I thought did fairly well during the combine. He's a guy I would take as the 3rd corner off the board, but definitely Henderson's the second best corner in this class. I don't know why people were so low on him before the combine.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's get to the kickers and punters. Just kidding. We're not going to get to that. Sorry, kickers and punters. Don't care. All right, last question before we sign off. Who should the Patriots draft at 23, considering if Brady returns? Who did the Patriots draft at 23?
Oh, that's a good question. See, part of me wants to say a receiver, but I think that they would already address that in free agency for receiver and tight end. Because Brady prefers working with veterans as opposed to rookies. So I think they would go with someone on the defensive side. You have Patrick Queen mocked to them. I could see that happening. I could see his teammate Grant Delpit intriguing Belichick, or Xavier McKinney from Alabama, both safeties that could fill a need in the back end of their defense, because Patrick Chung is getting older, a little bit long in the tooth. So I could see it being that sort of pick. I could also see the team taking some offensive line help, depending on if a tackle they like is on the board. I wouldn't count on one being there, just because, as we talked about, they're very good. But if someone slips for whatever reason, the Patriots could add there and either kick Isaiah Wynn inside to guard, which they don't have to do, but they could if they lose Joe Thuney, or they could just have extra tackle depth.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I could see maybe receiver, but like you were saying, I think they want a veteran. Like Emmanuel Sanders stands out to me. So it wouldn't surprise me, but I think they go elsewhere. Like you said, Patrick Queen is in my mock. So I think he fits well there. I know they met with him at the combine. Like you were saying, the safeties make a lot of sense to me, or just best player available. But I think this is a trick question, because I don't think the Patriots drafted 23. I think they trade down. They don't have a second round pick from the Mohamed Sanu trade. So I think they're going to be eager to move down. I could see them dropping to like the mid 30s for a team wanting to move up for a quarterback or maybe another position, maybe Jordan Love in that range. So, all right, that's it. Anything to plug?
Yeah, I've got I'm going to be having another offseason simulation for the Redskins on Rigo's Rag. I do 2 per offseason, 1 after the regular season and 1 after the combine. So I'll be having that at some point in the next week. And over at NBC Sports Boston, I have my free agent rankings up. You can check those out. Me and my coworkers have worked on them. We'll be updating them throughout the offseason. And if you want to talk football, just hit me up on Twitter at Jacob Camenker. Follow me. I'm always down to talk about stuff. So, yeah, definitely reach out to me as free agency and draft season really kick up more.
Sounds good. I'm at walterfootball.com. Updated 2020 NFL mock draft today. I'm going to be adding round 6 tomorrow. So check that out if you'd like. 2021 NFL mock draft will be updated as well later in the week. And then free agencies are right around the corner. So we're going to have grades for everything, all the trades as well. So yeah, check out walterfootball.com. And I will talk to you next week.
All right. Sounds good. Talk to you then.
All right. Bye.